Hey everyone, welcome to a brand new MinotaurZombie review slash thoughts, this time on the long-awaited Jagged Alliance 2, Vanilla 1.13. If you guys don't know what the 1.13 stands for, basically this game has a huge cult following and they make a big fan-made patch. It adds a bunch of stuff to the game, but I played it by using the vanilla mode, which keeps it as close to the original as possible while still having a lot of the nice features, hotkeys, that sort of thing from 1.13. I'll get more into the 1.13 aspect of it later. I'll start by just kind of going over the game itself. It was developed by Surtech, who's probably most well known for the Wizardry series. You know, those old first-person adventure RPGs that were like 80 hours long, but they were revolutionary for the time. So Jagged Alliance 2 came out in 1999, and it's not a game you hear people bring up a lot. This is how I've always heard of it, and how I first discovered it myself. You go on a forum board or somewhere on the internet and you say, hey, I really liked the old XCOM UFO Defense. What are some other games like it that I would enjoy? Almost always people will say, play Jagged Alliance 2. It's like a more complex XCOM UFO Defense. I don't know if that's a really good way to describe the game. It's really hard for me to describe this game. It's like part XCOM UFO Defense, sort of, but then there's so many RPG elements, kind of like from a Fallout 1 or Fallout 2. But before we get into more of the gameplay stuff, let's go over the story real quick. You don't need to play Jagged Alliance 1 to understand this game. I don't know, I've never played it. I don't know how much connection there is between the two. I know there's some mercs and some characters that are recurring, but it's really not necessary, so don't worry if you haven't played the first one. The game starts off with you, a mysterious unnamed man, hired to basically liberate the country of Aruklo from a horrible, evil woman named Adriana, who is like a tyrant. She basically runs the country with an iron fist. It's up to you, with some starting money, to hire some of the best mercs in the world and bring her down. And I tell you what, if this game does one thing right, it's that it makes you feel like one lone guy hiring a small team and basically taking on an entire country. This game is deceptively long. For those of you who watched, my Let's Play of it took over a year, partially due to me being really slow and time constraints. The game looks deceptively short at the beginning. You do a few battles and you're like, oh, you know, I'm progressing really fast, this won't take very long. Gets out of hand really fast. And one of the first screens you'll see when you first start the game is a laptop screen. And it's the little charms like this that really make me love the aspects of, you know, basically it's like an old like Windows 95 screen laptop. And this is where you go. You go on the internet to hire your mercs. There's a bunch of funny websites with funny quotes and stuff like that. You got email. It's kind of your central hub of a lot where you'll be doing a lot of different things. And it won't take long before you realize that, unlike XCOM, every merc is actually a person who has a name, a backstory, certain skills they're good at, differing stats, different voice actors. Everyone has a different voice. And it goes so deep as to actually have likes, dislikes. Some characters are racist. So you have to manage your squad in such a way that all the mercs get along so that they'll want to be rehired back. It's the exact level of depth. It doesn't get so overwhelming that you have to be so worried X merc doesn't like Y merc, but then Y merc doesn't like Z merc, and it's like impossible to fit them all together like a puzzle. It's just enough to be there and give you a real sense of personality for each character, but it never gets in the way. It's like that perfect level. A lot of the mercs are based off of old action hero archetypes that we saw in the movies. There is a Schwarzenegger look-alike. There is just too many to count. There's so many, and it's half the fun of the game. Just hearing these mercs, growing with them throughout the game, because when someone dies, they're gone for good. And if you get too many people killed, people won't want to work with you anymore. It gets that in-depth. What doesn't really get that in-depth is the actual story itself. It never goes much beyond free the country, stop Adriana. But it doesn't matter. The charm of everything else of the merc interactions, the funny quips from Deidreana, just the situations you get into. That's all that really matters, and you don't even worry that the story itself goes nowhere. It's all about the situations that get you to the end of the game, you know? So now down to the actual gameplay of the game. And oh man, there's a lot to talk about here. So essentially, the actual land combat parts, after you've hired your mercs, you get your team together, you get into the action fray. Literally right away, they start you off in the battle. And if this is your first time through the game, you're going to get into that battle, and you're going to run right at the enemy, guns blazing like this is XCOM UFO defense because you can afford to take casualties and blah blah blah, and you're going to get slaughtered. This is a very not beginner-friendly game. There are so many nuances, there are so many things to learn, and you pretty much have to read the manual before playing this game. The game tries to do its best by throwing a little help screen at you at the beginning of the game, but honestly it's just information overload. It's a big text dump, and you'll read through it, but you probably won't remember much. You're gonna have to take some time and do some trial and error if you want to get into this game, because the best way to learn is either A, have a really nice group of people watching your Let's Play and telling you tips, or B, dying and learning from your mistakes. For example, in this game, it is practically suicide to be standing when there's enemies about. You almost always need to go at least crouch, otherwise they're just gonna gun you down. Things like cover are incredibly important in this game, but there is no cover display. It's not like XCOM Enemy Unknown where it's like, this is half cover, this is full cover. You go behind something, you go behind a tree, and you just gotta kind of assume that that's giving you cover. You just learn nuances like that over time of how much cover it's giving you. Now, if you are playing 1.13, there are little hotkeys you can do that'll show you how much cover and your chance to hit and all that. Even something as simple as firing your weapon, you assume you just click on the gun or you just point and then you click the button. But no, there's this whole spend extra action points to fire your weapon with more accuracy. Then there's burst fire mechanics. Then there's full auto mechanics. And every gun operates completely differently, and there's a lot of guns in the game. Now, if you guys couldn't tell from the video, or if you've never really seen a game like this, essentially, it's just a turn-based combat game where each merc gets so many action points per turn, and that's basically your currency to do actions. You use action points to move, you use action points to fire your weapon, pretty much everything. And once you run out of action points, your turn ends, it goes to the enemy's turn. But there's more to it than that. Similar to XCOM UFO Defense, if you save some action points at the end of your turn, you can carry up to 5 over to your next turn, and if you leave yourself with a lot of action points left, you get a chance to interrupt the enemy. I really enjoy how this game handles it compared to XCOM UFO Defense. XCOM UFO Defense promoted camping to an extreme amount, mostly in favor of the aliens. In XCOM UFO Defense, every time you take a step, and if the alien has action points, there's a % chance they just get to take a free shot. In this game, and this is another one of those nuanced mechanics that you just don't know about, and you'll just assume it works like XCOM until someone tells you differently. Essentially, the only time you can interrupt in Jagged Alliance 2 is the first time you see an enemy that turn. So for example, if it's my turn and I run around the corner and an enemy spots me, but there is no interrupt triggered, I can keep running towards him, and that same enemy that already saw me that turn cannot interrupt that particular merc. It allows for a little bit more aggressive play, and when you actually get an interrupt, you get to choose your actions. You could actually run away, you could fire, you can choose how to fire, whereas XCOM, you just fire whatever shot, however many turn units you had left. In the end, the one comparison to XCOM I feel that is accurate is that this is a more complex XCOM in regards to this combat. All the things you could do in XCOM are still here, like blowing up walls to go around enemy positions. But in XCOM, you just kind of run at the enemy and fire your gun. There's some, hide behind walls and stuff. I love old XCOM. Duh, that's one of my favorite games. But this game has so much more to it. You need to learn how to effectively use things like smoke grenades. You need to learn how to use things like the chemical flares that light up areas. And even things like, do I enter this area at daytime or nighttime, will have such a huge impact on the outcome of that mission, it's unbelievable. Night operations basically cut everyone's line of sight huge, and if you don't have night vision goggles, you could end up stumbling right into an enemy that you barely see, and if they get the first turn, they'll just barrel stuff you and blast away. At the same time, during a night mission, you can do more stealthy aspects. You can actually use throwing knives for silent kills, and it won't alert the other areas around them. As complex as the game mechanics themselves are, I wish I could say the same thing about the enemy AI. The enemy AI is pretty stupid. They occasionally do some incredibly smart things that will always leave you scratching your head and baffled because they act so stupid pretty much at all other times. For the most part, they just have this mentality of running right at you. Sometimes the most effective strategy is to just cause a ruckus, post up in a prone position with some of your best snipers, and watch as they run right at you, and you just pick them off one by one. At other times, they'll be the smartest guys of all time, and they'll sit in the best corner inside of a building and wait for you to try and run in, at which point they'll just blast you. Those are some of the best and most terrifying moments of the game. Terrifying because if you play on Iron Man like me, which makes the game a lot more interesting because then you're not save scumming, you lose a merc from some guy you didn't even know was there. And then it makes it the best part because then you gotta try and figure out a strategy of how you're gonna get in there to get at him. Do you blow through a wall? Do you throw a smoke grenade? You have so many options available, but sometimes it's tough picking the right one for the job. So what about the parts of the game when you're not fighting it out tooth and nail with the enemy? Well, welcome to probably 60% of Jagged Alliance 2, possibly more. The preparation screen, or the geoscape of Jagged Alliance 2. This is where you hire mercs, you travel around the world map, you go to different locations, and the game's a little bit formulaic, especially towards the end of the game. You quickly realize it's kind of like, go to a city, work your way through the city, liberate it completely, make sure you train it up with militia all the way so that you can safely leave it and it won't get taken over by other soldiers roaming around the map, and move to the next one. You'll be spending a lot of time on this preparation screen, though. There's a few big reasons for it. A, if you're not adequately prepared for the mission you're going into or the area, and you don't make sure everyone has a med kit or a smoke grenade or a flare, you're gonna get your ass kicked, and you don't want to get your ass kicked just because you forgot to bring along something simple like a smoke grenade. 2, you only have so many inventory slots per merc, and there's a lot of stuff you want to carry. You do a lot of inventory management in this game. Possibly too much of it. And this is where 1.13 having that installed really helps because I think they add some nice inventory management tools. I'm not sure if the stack and consolidate was there before. There's so many different guns in this game. You have to look at each one's stats, and the game is very realistic in how it handles guns. Generally, the gun doesn't determine the damage that the weapon's gonna do, it's the ammo type. The gun is usually just what kind of fire modes does it have? Does it have semi-auto? Does it have burst? Does it have full auto? What kind of attachments can it have? Can you put a scope on it? Can you put barrel extender on it? And how many action points does it take to fire it? Some guns only take a few action points to fire a semi-auto, but some are really good at full auto. There's so many things to look over, and there's so many guns in the game, you are constantly looking to see, is this one better than this last one? I can't tell. And the amount of time spent doing that really adds up fast. Now you might be thinking, oh, well, inventory management, I'm really used to that. That's a lot of RPGs. Well, we're not done with the preparations yet. Now you have to assign all of your mercs to be doing stuff. That includes repairing your equipment. There is weapon, armor, item degradation over time. You need to tell them to train the militia for the area. You need to assign which ones are going to bandage themselves or heal the wounded. Then you have to assign them, what stats they want to train in their off time. And then finally, they all get tired over time, so you have to remember to have them sleep every so often. Another one of those nuanced things that doesn't seem like a big deal at first, but if a merc is only 70% awake, that is a huge deal to his accuracy, to his everything. So you need to make sure that they sleep enough. There is a lot of micromanagement in this game, and it wouldn't be quite so bad if I could assign default duties to people, default stats to train. But no, like anytime a battle happens, it resets everyone's, what they're doing to like a static nothing. Or if I move, it sets them back to a static nothing. If I could just say, yeah, if in his off time, if he's not doing anything, train this. Instead, you have to click on each one, do this. It takes a lot of time. And funnily enough, by the time you guys see this or if you're in the future, I'm sure 1.13, maybe 1.14 addresses this. Really, my other biggest problem with the preparation screen, or just how the game plays out in general over time, is that you never feel rushed. You'll get an email occasionally saying, why aren't you doing more? Why aren't, get on it before I get mad? But they never get mad. There's nothing stopping you from just sitting tight, fending off, playing defense and fending off the waves, and just building up your stats and waiting for the shop to refill with more, the best armor, and that kind of stuff. It feels like there should be a little bit more pressure on you to get things done and move things forward in the game at times. Some of you are probably saying right now, Minotaur, why don't you think it's a good comparison to go straight to XCOM for this game? Sounds exactly like XCOM so far to me. Well, it does a few things different. First of all, probably because of their background in the Wizardry series, there's a lot of stats in this game. There is direct level ups, and there's stats for each kind of skill: explosives, repair, marksmanship, all sorts of things. Then there's also like quests. You can go into town, talk to the locals, see what's bothering them. You help them out, you might get a new merc that's willing to join you or raise your loyalty for the area. It adds a nice, fun extra thing, and it adds a lot more personality to the world. I wish there was a little bit better quest log. It just shows up in the history, and then you'll see events in red text, which means I think that it's a quest you haven't done yet. But it doesn't really handle it as well as I would like it to. That's basically the gameplay in a nutshell. It's a very, very complex game that requires a lot of micromanagement, but the payoff is worth it. I mean, don't get me, you have to spend a lot of time preparing, but when you get into battle and you see everything play out the way you want it to, it feels really good. As always, audio is a big part of me in games, mainly the music. The music in this game is alright. I wouldn't say any of it is bad, but at the same time, there's only a few tracks that really stuck with me through the end, and there isn't a lot of music tracks to begin with, and some of them play a bit too often. The sound effects, though, and I don't normally talk about sound effects much, but the sound effects in this game are top-notch. I don't know much about real-life guns, but I imagine that these sound pretty damn close to how real-life guns sound. Everything just sounds spot on with the sound effects. Kudos to whoever the sound effect director was in this game. And now we get to talk about the 1.13 patch / mod / whatever you want to call it. Now 1.13 by itself adds a ton of stuff to the game, kind of overhauls it from the ground up, fixes a lot of things, adds new mechanics, and generally, and I think most people will tell you this if they're a veteran of this game, if you're a beginner, do not play the full 1.13. You'll be even more overwhelmed, if that's possible, than regular Jagged Alliance 2. But what you can do, if you want the ability to have extra resolution options, and a bunch of new hotkeys and features, such as instantly switching to the right either night vision goggles or sun goggles, which is the best feature of all time in this game, then you can simply use the 1.13 vanilla ini file. Essentially, it keeps as many things as possible close to the original vanilla settings, but it still sneaks some new changes in. Some of the notable ones would be the helicopter having fuel, which, by the way, this also introduces some new glitches. Never leave the helicopter sitting and wait for his fuel to run out. He will sometimes get stuck. Always send him back. Other aspects changes the burst mechanics and the full auto mechanics a little bit from the base game. For the most part, I think things stayed mostly the same, but there are a few changes. Another nice thing about playing vanilla 1.13 is that if you are into modding your games, there's a nice tool that lets you modify the ini file, which gives you a mix of maybe both old and new. For example, maybe you wanted to change how effective camo is in the game. There's a really nice, easy ini editor built in, and it allows you to just easily change values, no needing to open Notepad. Installing 1.13 is super easy. If you have the Steam version like me, don't worry, it's not complicated like some things you may see on the internet tell you it is. All you have to do is go to your Steam folder, copy the Jagged Alliance 2 folder, paste it somewhere else in your hard drive, and then just install the mod there. It is very important, guys, that if you're not going with the most recent release, which is more of a beta, there's probably bound to be more bugs in that release, that you install the bug fix after you install 1.13. First you download the latest stable version, then you download the bug fix version. It'll fix a lot of issues, including the ammo glitch I had where I was putting like speed loader bullets into like Glocks. Now another important fix that you want to get that isn't included in the patch is some XML table data for how the SAM sites operate with militia. There's either 1 or 2 SAM sites that don't let you train militia, and they're supposed to. Now I uploaded my fixed file that was done by the very nice people watching my Let's Play. And I uploaded that so you guys can download that if you want, but if you're scared to download things, that makes you nervous, that's fine. Just know that you should open up that file in Notepad or whatever and change the values around if you're comfortable doing that. I'm not sure exactly what you need to do, but you need to change it so that it allows militia to be trained there. If you don't allow militia to be trained there, then you need a reserve force there at all times to defend it, and it'd be really silly. I've also linked where you can go download the official version of 1.13 so that you guys can go there. At the end of the day, is Jagged Alliance 2 worth playing? Is it a good game? It's a very good game. It's a very, very good game. The problem is it is not beginner friendly. It is a very time-consuming game. It's a very long game, and you need to be willing to put forth a lot of time into it. There are a lot of nuances, a lot of mechanics to learn. And there were things I was still discovering at the end of the game. It wasn't until the last mission that I realized a mortar shell could be a dud. Not only that, but a mortar shell could have a delayed explosion. So at the end of the day, Jagged Alliance 2 is not for everyone, and it's probably a big reason why it's not more incredibly popular. At the same time, if it sounds interesting to you, go give it a shot. It's not that expensive. You can get it on GOG, you can get it on Steam, and you're good to go. So thank you guys so much for watching. This has been MinotaurZombie. Later, everyone.